Hey, everybody, what's up? You are live on Shally's Alley with today's special guest for this episode, Leigh Rodriguez, book author, keynote speaker, RPO leader, direct sourcing talent executive slash visionaire, et cetera, et
I
cetera.
love it.
Renaissance woman. I don't know what else I can throw in there. Did I say
Thank you,
author? I
Shelly.
said author, but
Yeah, you did.
both,
All the things.
all the things, all of the
All
above
the things.
boxes
Thank you.
checked.
That was
Um,
awesome.
yeah, no, for seriously though, if you guys have ever heard of AgileOne, they are the largest MSP. If you're looking at me going, what in the heck is an MSP and does it come with Chinese food? No, that's MSG and is managed service provider, which means they are the supplier to large enterprises that want to outsource their recruiting to a managed kind of like a centralized contracting station. And so search firms and agencies and other RPOs will funnel through the MSP. So AgileOne is the largest one of those, and also in their own right, their own large global RPO, which is recruitment process outsourcing for the
Absolutely.
uninitiated.
Yep.
But also, Leigh came from AWS. You might recognize that as Amazon Web Services, and also a company that used to be called Alexander Mann Solutions, which arguably would have been, at the time when it was called Alexander Mann Solutions, probably the largest and most successful global international RPO. Now they're called AMS, and they have a very unique model. So you've been in kind of like, you've been in like traditional RPO, if there is such a thing,
Yep.
MSP,
Yeah.
large corporate enterprise, international RPO, healthcare, pharma, tech, engineering, banking. I mean, wow, is there like anything you didn't do? You
Um,
leap tall buildings and
no, I've done that. No, I'm just kidding. No, I haven't leaped any tall buildings, but that's really kind of you, Shelly. Yeah.
recently you published How to Build a Sustainable Talent Pipeline with Kogan Page, which
I did.
literally just came out like
Yeah, I did.
what,
Yeah.
this last week, 2
March,
weeks ago,
March,
March.
March. Yeah,
Oh,
March
okay,
31st it came out in the US. March 3rd it launched in the UK.
all
Strategic
right.
people sourcing. Yeah, it was definitely a journey to write and about 3 decades of experience thrown into that book. It was an incredible experience.
I feel you, man. Isn't it
Yeah,
weird though? Like
it is.
I'm on my third book, and as we were discussing, it's kind of like, but I have a quote from a famous author. I think it was, well, it might have been Orson Welles. I'm not exactly sure. I'm probably misquoting or misattributing the quote, but
Right,
it was like, it's a quote about writing a book is like a disease. It's like you have to get it out. Like you've got to just. It's
Yes.
not. It's a compulsion. It's this like,
It's like
you know
tattoos.
you just have to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then once you do, then like everything changes. But it's really, really, really difficult. I don't
It
know how
is.
people do it. After my third one, I'm done, man. I'm just like, oh,
Yeah, it took me an entire year, to do this book, and I had a great publishing company, great editors, and I was really structured about it and really dedicated, certain times during the weekends to get it done because I have a full-time job, right? I can't sit around and write books all day, even though I would love to. And it really worked out. It took the overwhelm away, and I'm really proud of what came out of this book, and I'm really excited to talk about it today.
that's smart. That's the way I would
Yeah,
have done it. Definitely would
yeah,
have done it that way. I didn't. I sat down and like the first one that I wrote little chapters and then stitched them together, which kind of came out like a quilt, not a book.
yeah.
The second one was much more comprehensive, 560 pages, and eventually that became essentially a college textbook. Is
Oh,
like
wow.
I taught
I didn't
university
know that.
classes with it. Yeah, it's thick. And it's still on Amazon, but it's a college textbook, so it's more of a desktop reference. Then the third
Nice.
book was really a book you can read, like people can pick
Yeah,
it up and
yeah,
like flip through it, and there's so
yeah.
that's really what I wanted to do when I finally did. I'm like, all right, that's it, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm hoping to get out my next one late next year.
Oh
I'm
my
really
God.
excited about that one. I've got to, already negotiating a couple of titles and what that's going to look like. And I've got this itch. I've already started writing some of it. But I really, when I kicked the book off, I really kind of dove into doing the research, creating a really solid outline, and then build the schedule into that. So it made it a lot easier. So
Wow.
yeah,
That is way more disciplined than I even considered.
that's my OCD
Uh,
and definitely in the works for sure.
I have OCD too, but I don't have that kind of OCD. I have the one where I have ADHD and OCD, so I'm always completely obsessed about how distracted I am.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, I put the ISBN up there for folks who want to look it up. It's probably one of the easiest ways to look up the book,
I
although
love
the
that.
title
Thank you
is
for doing
actually
that.
pretty good
You're the
too.
first one that's ever done that. That's a good idea, actually. See,
It's
we're
pretty
just giving
easy,
each other
right?
great ideas. Yeah,
You just
yeah.
put that in
I could write you your book outline for your fourth thing. You just get out the ISBN for my book, okay?
That's right. That's right. Um, and so I'm also going to put your LinkedIn URL here as well. There we
Thank
go.
you. Appreciate that.
Cool, cool, cool. So I had some things that I wanted to ask
Yeah.
about
Shoot.
the book, which is really honestly about your experiences, which, as you
Yeah.
said, went into the book. So it's kind of
Yeah.
about the book, but it's also kind of about you and
Sure.
the shift from reactive to proactive sourcing,
Yeah.
talent communities, technology integration, cross-functional talent
Yeah.
acquisition, and sort of the candidate journey, if you will. Um, you wrote it's kind of a clear-eyed perspective
Yeah.
about where AI genuinely helps and
Right.
where human judgment is non-negotiable. And to me,
Mhm.
that touches that's like a hot button for me.
It is
First
a
of
really
all,
big one.
to me, it's huge. And I'm going to preface it by saying um, AI is bullshit. Okay. There is no AI. This is not artificial intelligence, folks. We call it AI because that's what everybody calls it. But really, this is just machine learning in a large scale. These are language models that are able to predict the next word in a sentence. It's
Yep.
not a thinking, intelligent machine.
No, it is
And
not.
so, because of that, it's important to recognize the limitations. Humans still have to make decisions. If we
Absolutely.
let these machines think for us, even if they were capable and they're not able to think, but even if they were, we would lose the ability to think for ourselves.
Yep.
So, just kind of putting that into perspective,
I
there's a
totally
lot
agree
we
with
can
you.
do
I like
with
I, I
them.
like the way you said that. Yeah, it's bullshit.
We can do a lot with it. It's a
We
great
we can.
tool,
Yeah,
but it's a
absolutely.
tool. It's not a replacement for
Mhm.
humans or intellect or
I
creativity or
yeah,
oversight or strategy or, you know,
yeah.
so
I I completely agree with that. I just stood on a stage not too long ago and I predicted, I said in the next 6 to 8 months and into next year, I think humans are going to desire that human connection again. And it was very interesting. I was talking to a young
it's
lady
happening already.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was talking to a young lady at a conference, and she was telling me that with Indeed's kind of new AI model that they've got going and things like that, her leadership required her to, implement this into their recruitment process. But what they did was they gave the candidate the option to either interact with AI or not interact with AI. And
Mhm.
she said in every single application that they've gotten, everybody has said no to the AI.
Right.
That tells you something.
That does tell you something, but what I think I don't agree that that's the right way to do it
Okay.
because the people are going to make the choice, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you're asking them, do you want to talk to a machine or a human? Of course, they're going to say, I want to talk to a human. The
Right.
correct choice, in my opinion,
Sure.
is you give them the option of, do you want to talk to somebody today, right now? If
Mhm.
so, you could talk to an AI, and
Mhm.
it's an AI, and it's educated in what we do, and it can speak about a lot of things. You will always have the option to talk to a human, but for that, we need to book an appointment. So, right now, you can talk to
I
an
like that
AI,
strategy. Yeah.
or you can schedule a talk with a human, which may be tomorrow or the day after. But if you want, you can start with AI and then move to a human, right? Like that. There's a better way to phrase that, but to me,
Yeah.
that gives me the option of, oh well, you know what? That's fine. I don't want to do AI so much that I'll wait, or
Yeah, you wanna
actually,
learn the quick facts. Yeah,
yeah, let's get some of this done out of out of the way. And that's really what AI
yeah,
is really
yeah,
good at.
of course.
It's
Yep.
more that than than handling the entire relationship. And what I
Yeah,
cannot stand is when there's it's pretentious. It's that's not the right word. When AI pretends to be human.
yeah.
I don't want you to pretend to be. I want you to be an AI.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know you're a robot.
It
Just
really
act like
does.
a
Yeah,
robot.
exactly.
You know, it's
Yeah,
fine. So,
yeah,
all right. So the question that I was gonna ask you is, um, you and I both have 30 years in the business,
yeah.
and why did you wait? I mean, why did you wait this long to write a book? Or the other side of that question is, what was the thing that tipped you over, that tipped the scale, where you were like, okay, fine, I'm gonna do it and write the book? 'Cause a lot of people
Yeah,
think about writing a book, but
yeah.
what tipped your scale to where you finally did it?
This is a really, really great answer. And I'm going to tell you, it's right in the beginning of my book on why I wrote this book. I got tired of watching TA leaders do this wrong so
Oh,
many
good
times.
lord.
So many times. I mean, Shelly, it was, and I had to be a part of this, right? I wasn't in those seats where I can make those decisions or transform TA or, those kind of things. And the areas where I was able to make that impact was during my RPO days, right? And being able to take on the TA function, kind of restructure it, rebuild it. And I saw what worked and I saw what didn't work. And that's what this book is really about is how do you make talent acquisition work? What are those sourcing strategies? Because we know that, recruitment in and of itself is a whole, right? But we know that that sourcing strategy is the engine to all of it, every bit of it.
You and
And
I
that's
know
where it
that,
needs to start.
but
Yes, not
a lot of
everybody
other
else
people
does.
don't.
No.
And there's still people out there who think sourcing is typing a keyword into LinkedIn, hitting enter, and downloading resumes.
Yeah, no. I mean, the most people think about, strategic sourcing means, a complex Boolean search string, right? And now it's about AI scraping and all those fancy tools, right? But those are just what I call tactics, right? And I really talk
Yeah.
about a true a really true strategy is about moving the organization from, kind of that firefighting to a proactive fireproofing. And
Oh my
when
god, I
you
literally had a presentation called "Fireproof, Don't Firefight." Like, literally,
exactly,
you
yep,
stole my
yep,
words.
I did,
Awesome.
yep.
That's
Yeah, it
awesome.
really means moving and shifting
Yeah.
away from traditional requisition-based models where we only, we're scrambling around to find all the people and a lot of things get missed, right? And so strategic people sourcing is about that predictive workforce planning. And I know everybody's like, "Oh my God, workforce planning. Oh my God, we can't ever get the numbers right." Okay. No, it's about sitting down with the business.
Planning is not an exact science. It doesn't mean if
It
you
is
make a
not.
plan, it doesn't mean you have to execute the plan
Exactly.
exactly as it was planned.
Exactly. It's about sitting down with the business to anticipate what skills we know we're going to need in the next 6 to 8 months. You can't tell me you don't know those things. What is your data? What is the predictive data telling you? Hey, I've noticed for the last 2 years we've hired these skill sets in this time frame. Start building a pipeline to that, right? And so when we ensure that we've got those capabilities, I really think that's where you'll hear me say this a lot, and I have it as kind of my motto is when you transform talent, you transform business. And if every company
Hmm.
took the talent acquisition function as the core base of the foundation of the organization,
Mhm.
I think that's where the transformation happens. And that's a lot of why I wrote that book is because they do this wrong so many times.
And it's not
So many times.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not just the strategy versus tactics, which gets
Yeah.
folks really confused.
They do.
People think that strategy is what you and I would call tactics,
Yeah.
right? They think that
Yeah.
doing a Google
Mm-mm.
search is a strategy. That's not. That's actually technically that's operations, not even tactics.
Yeah.
But it gets confusing, and so they put the let's post jobs as a strategy when really that's a step, right? So
It's not yeah,
yeah,
that's a reactive step, not a proactive
not
step.
it's not even proactive, right?
Yeah.
So being proactive is what it's about. Okay, so when people
Yeah.
say strategic sourcing,
Yeah.
they're just describing tactics.
Yeah.
What actually makes sourcing really strategic?
I think it is just what
Proactive,
I yeah, yeah, being proactive. Don't
like
be
go
the
deeper,
fireproofing.
double click on
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, exactly. So being that proactive, recruiter or sourcer is being able to build, and I talk about this, about building those talent communities, right? Engaging with those talent communities before a requisition is even opened. I think that is a big part of the direct sourcing business that I love so much is the engagement strategies that we build to connect people to that brand of that organization. They already know what's happening in the
Mm.
organization in those engagement strategies. So really diving into being proactive in that space to start creating those talent pools and talent communities. And that's something we really dive into in the book and kind of the misconception between the two.
Wait, you can't always. I just want to dive a little bit deeper. I think that's if hopefully you've seen some of my shows in the past. I tend to do this. I tend to kind of drill down.
Yep.
Um, you can't always build a talent community. You can't always engage candidates ahead of demand. Sometimes sourcing, even proactive sourcing, is a little bit um, more. The roles are unique, and so like for I'll just give you an example.
Yeah.
This is a classic example I've used many times because it lends itself so well to this example. And
Mhm.
that is when I was working at Coca-Cola, we needed to replace our chief security officer. And um, this is the person who was in the job
Mhm.
retired after 25 years of service.
Sure.
Prior to coming to us, they had already retired from the FBI after 25 years of service. The background that they needed was to fulfill this job was so specialized because Coca-Cola is both an intellectual property organization, so you have a lot of IT security,
Mhm.
right? So a CISO, a chief security officer, but also it's a bank. If you think about all of those um, delivery trucks that bring you your soft drinks to not the big ones that go to the grocery stores, but the mom and pop shops, down the street business as they call it, those trucks are gigantic piggy banks. People pay cash for that, and so there was actually organized crime,
Wow.
vending machines. There was physical, these facilities that were depositories would get robbed sometimes. So there's physical security. It's a very weird job. Not
Yeah.
not not a typical security officer in computers. Not a typical physical security. It's a combination of both. There was absolutely zero benefit whatsoever to building a pipeline or a talent pool because we were not going to
Interesting.
out for
Yep.
another 25 years.
Right.
So in that case, how is sourcing strategic?
So I think this is starting with the workforce intelligence. I think that you start with what's in that market because I'll give you an example. Some of these strategies that we have in place don't really feed to the grassroots. And that what you just
Mhm,
described is grassroots, right? And
mhm,
this is what our RPO teams do a lot with some of our clients today is, these warehouse workers or manufacturing facilities. It's down to and I know this sounds so grassroots, but it really is newspapers or we had one girl on our team who she lived locally to the client and she literally made flyers. She went around and put them in,
mhm.
on the bulletin boards in the grocery
Yep.
stores and things like that. I mean, that's really, Shelley, you and I've been doing this longer. That's old school recruiting,
I
right?
used
I
to do
mean,
yeah, I've done that.
I've
Hot
done
dog
that.
carts.
I would literally, and excuse the verbiage, but I would literally rape the company's phone system and figure out the extension. Like I knew engineering was extension 200. Like
And dialing up and down and
I
all the things that yep.
exactly. So this is more about when I talk about strategies. It's more about the workforce intelligence or even the market of where the types of candidates we have to find. But I also believe that it really comes down to the type of sourcer that you have. And it's the curiosity. I know everybody says this, but when you talk to a sourcer who
Mhm.
has that curiosity, that passion, they're going to print a flyer, they're going to text people, they're going to call people, they're going to post it wherever they can. Like a true sourcer to me and true strategies is not using all this tactical stuff that we now have at our fingertips that you and I
Yeah.
didn't have when we started in this industry and being able to marry those up. I think that's you have to understand the competitive market. You have to understand the career patterns. You've got to understand the geography, the compensation, and really diving into the candidate behavior and what is going to draw them in. That's when I talk about a lot of those strategies it's going to vary, and it will vary based on the markets.
Absolutely. And sometimes they're sourcing is also offline. There's offline sourcing techniques, like you said.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
not, sourcing is not just searching a resume database or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, what do you think is, in your opinion, in your experience, the cleanest signal that a sourcing function is just reactive instead of strategic?
So I think, and I write about this, is if your team is caught in what I call the obsolescence trap, meaning the entire function, again, is triggered by this massive job requisition opening, right? And if
Oh,
your team is waiting for a manager to
Rex to
submit a
Rob.
formal request, exactly,
Yep.
or before, they start market mapping, or it's all just 100% reactive. Again, the post and pray type sourcing, right?
Okay.
That is where I think the default strategy is throwing a job description on a board and hoping the right candidate applies, right? That's not,
Wait for
to
the rec
me.
to open
Yeah.
and be published before you even start. That's your clearest
Yes.
signal that
Yeah.
you're
Completely
yeah, that
ignoring the
makes
passive
sense.
talent market. Yeah.
That
And
makes
so,
sense. Even if you're
yeah,
doing it after the fact, you're still ahead of you're behind the curve. Right.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And and there is cases that is going to happen. You've got, somebody who
Yeah.
voluntarily you left from one day to the next, and now we've got, and sometimes that is what the strategy calls for. But that can't be the
But
strategy
if
for
that's your
everything.
mode,
Yeah.
then you're in the wrong
It is
you're on
yeah.
the wrong
And I know
end of
that's,
the
again,
spectrum.
that's not magic fairy dust. This isn't something we don't already know. It's just you've got to change your mindset around this. It is absolutely a trap that they get all caught up in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. So what's the biggest misunderstanding, fundamental misunderstanding about a talent pool? What do people
So
just completely get wrong?
I think, okay, my one of my biggest pet peeves, and we'll talk about this, and I really believe this is why the direct sourcing model that we have, that I've built with AgileOne is a huge differentiator between our competitors, is companies fundamentally confuse a talent pipeline with a talent community.
Tell us the difference.
Totally. So a pipeline is a one-way street, right? So it's just a static list of names, and they're in there marinating, and they kind of scrape out all the company benefits and blah, 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 right? And a community, on the other hand, is kind of like that. I look at it as a two-way relationship. So, and I truly believe that companies misunderstand this by only reaching out to their pools when they
Which is
need
a
to fill a
list.
job.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, it exactly is the list. And so when you have earned the right to ask for an application, right, by following what I call kind of a 90-10 rule, and that 90% of your communication must provide genuine value to the talent, like exclusive webinars or tech blogs or things like that. And the other 10% can be about really directly asking them about a job. And we talk about this a lot within our teams is I truly believe that the difference too between that pipeline versus a community is that the most effective sourcers don't operate in that transactional model, right? When they got that two-way relationship going, they're operating as market analysts. They're operating as a storyteller for your brand, right? And
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
those engagement strategies in that talent community are really what's translating that data into insight for them. And I think that's the difference, I think, between kind of modern sourcing between, kind of the talent pipelines and a community.
Okay. That's the difference between a pipeline and a community.
Do you agree?
Let me break that down because there's more than one component there.
Yeah.
A static list is a pipeline.
Yep.
Uh, a community is a two-way street.
Yeah.
But also, the talent community is more about um, understanding their motivators and
Yes.
actually getting to know. So you don't just have intel on who they are. You
Mm-mm.
have more than that. You have
Yep.
comprehension. You have understanding. You have alignment.
Yep.
That's where I think that those are yeah, you know what? It's just two, but those are the two big ones. Those are the two big ones. There's
Yeah.
more nuance, but that definitely is. You put those two things together, and you don't have a list anymore.
Right.
And I think there's a misconception that community needs to be like a vibrant, active like online discussion community. It doesn't have to be online. The
No.
community, it doesn't have to be, they interact with each other necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's they interact with you, and it's
They
your
interact with us.
right,
Yes.
exactly.
They're interacting with that company's brand
Yeah,
also, right?
and that
Like,
exactly, not with themselves necessarily, although
no,
you can
not at
have
all.
that
And
too.
that's actually a really good point. I've never thought about it like that because when you say I'm always interested in how people react to certain words, right? And when you say community, that's exactly what I think about. I think about a Facebook or, it communicating on a platform. That's not what it, no, that's not what that's about. I think the community piece is about understanding your candidates, right? They're engaging with you when roles come open. They're engaging with you about market insights we may share with them in the engagement journey or campaigns that they are a part of. And they know they want to work at that organization. And they know by joining this community, when whether we post a job or we reach out because you were a part of this particular, community or skills in that community, right? We know we're going to call you. We've already
Mhm.
talked to you 3 or 4 times, right? So instead of being so reactive when that requisitioned, you've now eliminated all that time segment of learning the company, learning the candidate. We've already done all that. It's about that top of the funnel that nobody talks about.
Right.
So yeah.
So if
And I
you
think
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
If you just bumped into a company tomorrow or
Yeah.
parachuted in, um, like my guest from last week said, you parachuted into any organization tomorrow,
Yeah.
what would be the one thing you would immediately audit? And I mean audit as in inspect, right? Not
Yeah.
like, you know, not the negative connotation of audit, but what would be the one thing you would slash inspect to understand their sourcing? And more
Yeah.
importantly, if it's working.
Yeah, so this is my bread and butter right here. So,
You
and
parachute
I'm
a
gonna
lot?
I do parachute a lot. Well, that's what we were hired to do, right? And
Uh-huh.
so it was funny because I was when I was at AMS, I had a very large engineering client, aerospace company actually, and we went in and I was told, hey, Leigh, we need you to in-flight into this account. I don't know, this stakeholder has a particular way of doing things. She's got green eyes and red horns. I was like, wow. So I get in there and I dive
I know that
into,
person.
yeah. Anyways, I'm probably oversharing way too much, but I get in there and I start auditing really the fundamental of what recruiting and sourcing, right, is about. And it's the team, it's the people that are doing it, right? You transform talent, right? You transform the
Mhm.
business. And so if I was to look at, one thing, actually be two things, I would look straight at the handoff between a sourcer and the recruiter. And the reason I bring it up this way is because oftentimes organizations do not segment those two roles. You either have the hybrid recruiter who's doing everything, so they're a jack of all trades and really a master of none, right? And the sourcer is, just throwing stuff over to the recruiter, right? And I really look at this from my RPO days of how we would model accounts that really worked. And the one thing that I would audit, if you were model is, hey, this is your sourcing team. That sourcing team are masters at going out into the market and finding candidates and bringing them in, where those recruiters are really focused on your strategies and connecting with the hiring managers and working those candidates through the business, right? And so what I would really look at was what I call the golden handshake. And that golden handshake is if a sourcer finds a brilliant candidate but has not passed that information, or has passed that information over to the recruiter that's messy or a manual email thread or disconnected spreadsheets, or they've, got this massive digital divide that I call,
Mhm.
right? And I oftentimes, and I talk about this a lot in my book as well, is those candidates that get missed, right? Because I once saw a unicorn type candidate, right, get lost in just kind of the competitor because of the buried handover between emails of recruiters and sourcers.
Mm.
That's really where I would start first, is looking at that. And then when systems and teams are disconnected, the candidate is going to feel that. They are absolutely going to feel that. And that's what I call a ghost in the machine, which kind of ruins the employer brand if you ask me about it. So I would audit those silos. The next thing that I would look at too is the engagement, because candidates that are, passive, that doesn't mean that they're uninterested, right? It means that people necessarily in that space aren't always actively searching. So they don't want to be sold to, and they're highly selective about who they invest their intention with. And
Okay.
this is where I talk about those sourcers and how they're, really driving the engagement with those candidates, and what are they talking about? Are we just approaching them with, a kind of an outreach filter test that I kind of walk through too is, you know, if you run your last sourcing message through this, is it giving them relevance? Is it respecting them in a kind of this psychological safety, be able to say, no, I
Okay.
don't want to talk about this job right now? Or is
Okay.
it giving you kind of risk and reduction? Does it make it safe to kind of explore committing to a new opportunity? So that's the two things that I would really start with. And it's, it's like when you build a house, right? If the foundation of that house is cracked, guess what? The walls don't stand up right, it's just uneven. So I start with people first.
Okay. You start with people first. I've heard that.
Yep.
But the signal on the engagement is what? That people are engaging even if they're not interested in that job? I think that's what I heard.
Yeah, so I
They're
think it's about
responding even if it's to say no thanks, maybe next time?
yeah, I mean, I
Okay,
think that's
okay,
that's a
okay,
big piece of it. It's a
okay.
message that really, when we talk about how the sourcing team is effectively getting people's attention, is it
Right,
by
it's not
just
because
saying,
everybody says
"Hey, I got a
yes,
job, can you
it's
say"
because
exactly, right.
yeah, it's because
And
some
I
people say, "Hey, that's not for me," maybe something,
yeah,
whatever. Yeah,
and
I gotcha. Okay.
you and I would talk
Yeah.
about that as a fall off during the funnel, right? Is
Mhm.
the messages that they're sending getting ignored because it sounds like a job description in disguise, right? Or corporate marketing jargon, right?
Yeah,
Or what we call urgency without relevance. Hey, we got a job. You want to talk about it? Can you start tomorrow? Like that's not a conversation, right? So that's the biggest things that I really look at when
okay.
auditing. Yep.
So when we're tracking this activity and we're measuring it and we
Yep.
are, um, evaluating whether things are working or not working, what is a metric that everyone tracks that you think is just noise?
Time to fill, hands down.
Yeah. You know what? 9 out of 9 times I've asked somebody that question, they've told me the same thing.
Yeah. I
And I
call
agree,
this
but like, why in the hell do we all agree time to fill is bullshit and then we still use it?
I know.
I don't get it.
I totally agree. And
Why
we
is it
do a
still
metric.
there?
Yeah, we do a metric swap, right? And so I call this the watermelon scorecard. And this is something really big, especially in
Watermelon?
the watermelon scorecard.
Is it because it's juicy but has no nutritional value?
No, it looks I don't know, but I'm gonna steal that. No, it looks beautifully green on the outside of your
Uh-huh.
dashboard. That's
Yep.
what it means. But when you cut into it, it's bright red with
Bright
underlying
red. Yeah.
problems.
That's even
Exactly.
better actually, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I
exactly.
see.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see.
Yeah, the traditional metrics around time to fill and cost per hire measures, it measures the speed and activity, but doesn't measure business
Yeah.
impact at
Doesn't
all.
measure business impact or outcomes
No,
at all.
you're
Yeah.
incentivizing your team to
Yeah.
push for, the fastest, candidate
All
instead of
right.
the best one.
I'm gonna get I need a button.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna get a big red button and I'm gonna put it here and I'm gonna be like, all right,
Ding,
officially
ding, ding.
I am declaring time to fill dead. And like,
Dead.
yeah,
I
like
think you
just
should write that.
we are shooting it in the back of the
Re-
head and burying it in
yes.
in the forest
In
in an unmarked grave.
absolutely. Yep.
Because it's just worthless. All right.
We do that. Remember that gong show where you go, the finger would
Yes.
be really bad. We're like gong every time somebody said time
I
to
mean, so somebody says time to fill. Burn.
fill. There,
Oh
bang.
man.
Absolutely. Oh,
So
it's
so we know that that does not connect to outcomes. What in sourcing does connect outcomes? Because I have a very strong opinion about that,
yeah,
and it's extremely controversial. So I want to hear somebody's not so controversial opinion about it.
yeah. And this is always because we deal with the heads of TA and also procurements and individuals who are over TA, right? And so being able to tell them, hey, throw out the watermelon scorecard, right? It doesn't
Yeah,
always work.
Anita on Facebook is saying, but HR
Yeah.
disagrees.
Yeah, and HR
Yeah,
does a great exactly. So I
they can
like
measure
to
it then.
yeah.
Good luck measuring it without us, though. Go ahead and measure it since you have access to the HRIS.
Exactly. You go ahead and do that.
You go
Exactly.
ahead. Yeah, knock yourself
Yeah.
out.
So I think I like to look at this kind of like a four-pillar approach, right?
Uh,
Pipeline health, candidate experience, I think hiring
mm,
efficiency, and then
mm,
quality of hire. Because if you
ooh,
hire
I
a
don't know.
great candidate, you don't like any of those?
Well, I just
Oh,
it's like
come
nails on a
on.
chalkboard.
Okay, so then what are yours?
Oh, no, 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 no. Let's break these down again. Okay, give me the four again. Quality,
Pipeline health,
efficiency, yeah, pipeline,
candidate experience, hiring efficiency, and quality of hire. You don't like those? I like those
efficiency,
because they
experience.
connect to the business. So if you track time to impact instead of time to fill, for example, I show business leaders that that a candidate sourced from a nurtured talent community doesn't just get hired 40 to 50% faster, but they ramp up and then reach productivity than just the post and pray applicants. So when you can prove that, your proactive sourcing, yeah. Shally, we lost you. Are you muted? Uh-oh. You really didn't like my four-pillar approach. Oh no.
I think my
Oh, you're back.
battery died
Uh-oh.
on my. Can you hear me? I think
Yeah.
it died. I'm gonna plug it in. This is
Okay.
gonna look like I have a weird hearing now, but
I was like, wow.
I think it's
Okay.
yeah. I really didn't like. I did not like those. No, the thing is that the thing with those is they're just increasingly hard to measure, and so like for
They are.
example, let's take quality of hire. There's so many different definitions for that, and there's also a part of the process, a big part of the process that's outside of the
Yeah.
reach of sourcing and recruiting. So if you are looking at this from the C-suite and you're looking at quality of hire, a component of that is sourcing, but also a
It does
component of
have to
that
be defined. Yep.
is yeah, exactly. So you need to define it well,
Hmm.
and it doesn't matter if you use the wrong metric, just stick to it, right? That way
Yeah.
you can show change in time. But if it's not defined well, it's not, it can be pretty wishy-washy. And then you also have to attribute, um what's the word, so who's accountable for it, and you can't have two people accountable for the same goal,
Yeah.
so it gets a little dicey. But yeah, I would say quality of candidate slate and then quality of hire split up. I would agree to that,
I like that. I like that too.
because
Yeah.
then you can attribute the quality of the slate is up to sourcing and recruiting. The quality of the hire is taking what we've been provided and making better decisions, and that has to do
Yes.
with assessment and and it's sourcing really can't do a whole lot of that. Now, pipeline is, tell me a little bit more about that, because that's one that can get very gray.
Here's what I'm going to preface this with. Each one of these have to be defined and it has to be mutually
Right.
agreed upon with the business. And that is what gets, to me, that is what gets lost in
That's the back
translation
of my
sometimes.
eyeballs itching, is
Yes.
what you just said. That's why I reacted
Yeah.
like that.
And
So
and you have to really align, especially
yeah,
being a head of TA for a while. You really have to understand, like, okay, look, these are what we're going to measure, and here is how they measure, right? This is what the definition of this measurement means. So when you ask questions, you consistently point everybody back to the
to the
definition of
definition.
what that exactly. Because when that
So
happens, then
pipeline
you
would
start to get
be,
pipe. Yeah.
for me, it would be, let's just, I'm just going to throw something out there.
Yep.
4.6 qualified interested candidates per hire, or 4.6 qualified interested candidates per open rec is what I'm looking at, right?
Yeah. Very
So
similar.
if you have like a dashboard that shows open recs,
Yep.
I don't know, I'm just going to throw out 27 open recs. I know
Right.
that's for you, for the recruit, whatever. 27 open recs, and then you have 4.6 on average qualified interested candidates per open rec. That's what I would call pipeline.
Yes.
Beyond that, it gets hard to measure. So okay, so we agree on that one. And then
We do agree on that. And then also skills-based hiring, right? So if you look at your talent community,
okay,
because in talent communities and our communities that we create, we've got campaigns, we have journeys, right? And some of those, both of those are all, some of are skills-based, right? So we'll bring in communities and design those around certain skill sets. That also can lead to pipeline health.
okay,
Because I'll give you an example. I have a client today, they are a Workday consulting company. If you've ever hired for Workday consultants, the
mhm,
recruitment pipeline funnel for that is inverted. Like these people are few and far between. And the reason I say that is because this particular client, they want to have public sector experience, and it's very minimal, right? And so us being able to have a very healthy pipeline of these individuals coming through the community, that also I look at as a pipeline health.
Okay. Agreed.
You
All right.
disagree?
And so no, I was processing. Okay, so then
That's your processing phase?
that was yeah, I was like, it just doesn't compute. So efficiency of what exactly were we talking about there?
Hiring efficiency,
Yeah.
so that would be like, so from time to open to time to a button a seat, right? So when you look at that
Mhm.
hiring efficiency, it's those cycle times. So when I look at a dashboard, right, it's those handoffs from from sourcer to recruiter, from recruiter to
Okay.
hiring manager to interview to, whatever assessment,
Got it.
those hiring efficiencies, it's those cycle times. Because how many times get stuck in, I'm waiting on hiring manager feedback.
Yep.
And being able to set up your dashboards this way can absolutely be done with an ATS. I've done it. And then
Absolutely. The
and then I'm
information
able to.
is there. It's literally
Yes,
there. The
yes,
date that they switched from one, when
yes,
they apply, when they switch to the next stage,
yes,
it's absolutely there, but nobody looks at it that way because they're so concerned with time to fill that they're looking
yes,
at the entire cycle time. And by the way, I'm going to flip what you just said on its ear, and it's hiring efficiency, but I mean the cycle times, right? But I don't want to look at it as for averages in state time and stage. I want to
yeah,
look at it either by function,
yes.
functional
You've got
area,
I'm going right there. Yep,
or yeah, or if you
yep.
can't do that because they're too broad, then look at it by like recruiting org or
Well,
whatever, like
Shelley, all of this is
the
based on
division.
behavior.
That's exactly what you're looking at, and exactly what you said is what we're trying to point out, right? We're trying to
Yep.
point out that we don't have a sourcing problem.
We
I
have
mean,
a
I'm not saying that that's the case. For
oh,
example, we don't have a
yep.
sourcing problem. We have a hiring manager reviewing
Yes,
resumes problem. We're
yes.
finding all these people, we're contacting them, they're converting, we're submitting them. Hiring managers accept them and they like them. We have a
Where's the
75,
drops?
80% take rate. And then the
Yep.
hiring manager sits there for 67 days before any of these people get
I
to the next stage.
I had a I
That's the
had a
problem.
yep, I had a client exactly like this. It was,
Mhm.
"Oh my god, it's recruiting's problem, it's recruiting's problem, it's
We
recruiting."
need
I'm
more
like,
leads. We
"Okay."
need more leads. More leads is
Yeah,
going to
over
be
this
more
range
people
expectations.
sitting waiting in the hiring
Yes.
manager queue.
So
Yep.
when we presented this dashboard around hiring efficiency, I was able to walk into the VP of engineering and go, "We don't have a hiring problem. We have a behavioral
We have a
problem."
hiring
And
manager
I'm going to
problem.
show you the demo. Right. And so we started presenting this data on a monthly basis, and it started to change
Right.
because your
Now they're being
bottom of
held
the
accountable.
funnel was exactly. And then we even took that even a step further to be able to say, okay, we're now breaking this out into engineering and supply chain and finance, and being able to say, hey, Mr. VP of whatever, this particular hiring manager is what's driving your business impact, right? Because of
Sweetness.
his behavior. And us being able to
Kick
do
ass.
that is what changed it. And then they ended up putting it into their performance.
And it drives outcomes. All
Exactly.
right. So
Yep.
we killed 3 out of the 4 that
Yep.
they're
Yep.
crushed. We got them. They're good. They're
Yeah.
nailed down. The last one, the ones that you said is the one that gives me the most headache,
Yeah.
and that's candidate experience. So break that one down like you did with the others, because this of the 4, this is the one that I have the hardest time um, proving, and significant experience. Like I was in charge of the surveys, the candidate experience surveys, and
Yes.
things like that, and I have some PTSD from that. So break this one down for me.
Yeah. So I think candidate experience, again, I think it's twofold. Yes, the standard thing is send out a survey and you get 4 out of 5 or an NPS or whatever, right? And so a lot of what I see with candidate experience is, again, I think back to behaviors, right? When you have that initial conversation with that sourcer, is that collaborative conversation continuing throughout the entire hiring cycle, right? And I think that hiring efficiency and candidate experience actually go hand in hand. Is what I just felt with this sourcer going to feel exactly the same way with a recruiter, with the hiring manager, with the hiring managers plus one, or whoever he wants to be a part of the interviewing cycle? I think it's about here. I know at AgileOne we have an incredible culture, and I know everybody says that about their culture. But if you interview with me, you're going to feel exactly the same way you felt with me with my team.
But how
Does
are
that make
you?
sense?
Yes, but how are you measuring that?
It is surveys.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it is surveys. Yeah.
And here's my problem with that.
Yeah.
Not the
It's
surveys, but the
yeah.
fact that, and I'll just and this is the problem that I have with it, and when I the
Yeah.
PTSD that I have.
Mhm.
Um, if you've if you've been to a restaurant with friends, a new restaurant that you're trying out
Yep.
with friends, you know
Yeah.
where I'm going with this?
I know, right, where you're going with this.
We've all had this experience, you're with your group of friends and you're trying out this new restaurant, and somebody at the table gets a dish that is just not right.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying, it's like, oh, this tastes like shit. Here, you try it.
Yeah.
They always want someone else to try the little piece of shit that they just ate.
Yeah.
But everybody else at the table that has a dish that they really like already ate theirs. And so the lesson from that is people with bad experiences are the ones that fill out surveys.
Yep. Not
And
the good ones.
so
Yep.
inevitably, when we get
Yep.
responses, they're the
Mhm.
negative ones, which means we don't get a response of, I felt great. This was awesome. I love your company. We get a lot of, my recruiter was
Called me a day later
mean,
than what I ended. Yeah.
or they were 5
Yeah.
minutes late,
Yeah.
or and a lot of that comes down to that candidate had a bad day,
Yeah. So here, I'm gonna tell you how one way I've solved this
which may or not may
is
have been my fault, is what I'm saying.
I think it was all yours. I'm just kidding.
Probably was.
Oh, yeah.
And hence my
Um,
problem with candidate experience.
well, this is when you get skin in the game on the candidate experience surveys from everybody.
Meaning,
And this meaning this is what my team has done before. The sourcer, the recruiter, the hiring manager all had a onus in asking that candidate to fill out a survey.
oh, okay.
How did you like your experience? Do you think it like even leading it back? And that was one of the ways that we really took that candidate experience survey because you're right. Absolutely. You go to the restaurant, it isn't the people that love the restaurant that's going to fill out the survey. It's going to be the people that just want to rant somewhere because the food was terrible. You know what I
Or they
mean?
just had a bad experience and it
Or
was
they
their
just
own fault, or they're just
exactly. You're
negative
going to
people,
have
or they're
right.
sad,
But
unhappy losers who wanted a refund.
and I actually really actually like the survey process because if your team is all committed to help getting that candidate to fill out the experience, whether it be good or bad, it's such a great conversation starter with the business to say, hey, here's what's happening. You've got an incredible recruitment team, but your hiring manager are really sucking at the interview process and being able to change behaviors. I think a lot of the candidate experience, the hiring efficiency, all of these are all back and tying back to behavior. I actually am a fan of the survey piece, but I'm also a fan of making sure everybody understands the value of the candidate. Getting the candidate to fill out that survey is
Mm,
really, really
yeah.
important for us.
So
Yeah.
what I learned was a lot of this has to be automated.
Yes.
A lot of it has to be the right timing. If you
Yes.
automate the right timing, then you get better results. And a lot of it has to do with the framing. For example,
Yep.
we want you to share your experiences, good and bad, because the good
Mhm.
experiences allow us to reward people for doing their job.
Yep.
The
I
bad
love that.
experiences allow us to replace or repair processes that aren't working. And so you are not helping yourself, you're helping others that come after you
Mhm.
by, rewarding good behavior and correcting bad behavior. So it's a little bit of the framing, but it's also the timing. When the timing changed, then we got better results. And one of
Yeah.
the what I realize is that the timing of sending out the feedback request too close to having interviewed
Mhm.
is when we got the most negative responses.
Yeah.
The most, just literally people complaining for no reason.
Yeah.
So basically, I learned that we can survey the application process pretty much immediately. How was your application process? And they'll
Yeah.
remember. If we wait more than a couple of days, they don't even remember applying for your job.
No,
But
and especially
same
if you
day,
an
yeah,
efficient
hey, you just applied for a
application process.
job.
Yeah.
Could we ask you a few questions? Boom. Interview has to be like a week later,
Yeah.
because they have to have forgotten whatever they were stressed, they had anxiety, they had a flat, whatever. Um,
Yeah.
and then later on with the hiring process, when we have a hire no hire decision, we also would approach people. Hey, you weren't selected for this position, but we
Those
would
are the tough
love
ones.
to invite you back. Please
Right.
go here to join our talent community, and we'd love your feedback on the process. We know that you weren't selected, and that's not the outcome you wanted, but unfortunately we can't hire everybody, and we still want you. We think you are someone who we would like to see apply again, so please
Yep.
stay in touch. Here's our community, and help us improve the process. that way. And also with people that got hired, and we got slightly better completion rates. Were still kind of a little, but at least now, and I want to temper all of this to say, it doesn't matter if you only get 10% as long as you're consistent.
Yeah.
And that's the other part. You have to continuously do it. If you just send out one survey once a year, it's
no.
Anybody can look. When I do my metrics presentation, I have this slide that I am just really fond of. It's an oldie kind of like black and white newspaper type of slide of a 40s or 50s executive, black suit, black tie, and they're jumping off of a desk, right? So the first slide shows them in midair, and it's like, hey, I'm flying. And then the second slide zooms out, and you see where he's about to land. And it's like, you look like you're flying right now, but 5 seconds from now,
later, not
broken
so
leg,
much.
ambulance.
Yeah,
metrics are working. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Metrics are great. All right, so now we broke those down.
We did.
So now we have the measurements for it, and the we got to do it over time. That's key. Got to do it over time, because that's how you show, is it better, is it worse, how is it like, is it the same for other jobs, other parts of the company, etc. Let's talk about age, and not necessarily age as in like how old, but like era, right? The companies evolve, and in different eras, they have different personas, right? A young, energetic, early stage company, pre-seed or they got a Series A. There's money, they're vibrant, they're developing, but they haven't gotten their ass kicked by, the world yet. Versus an early, a late stage startup that's got their third round of capital, and now they're dealing with like VCs want their money back, and things are, there's a lot more pressure, versus an enterprise, grown, versus an aged enterprise that's 120 years old. How does sourcing strategy evolve based on age?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, having worked in companies that are starting up and the big boys, right? I think at an early stage in that startup cycle, you really see kind of that 360 full cycle recruiter, that's handling
multiple
everything.
hats, do everything.
Exactly. From initializing sourcing to closing offers, all that great consistency, right? But it's going to be hard to scale with that. And I truly believe in the what I talked about earlier, the golden handshake, right? But being able to have those segmented models where they could focus in on just bringing in solid candidates. That recruiter is focused on the business, understanding where the business is going, right? And so as you scale to an enterprise level, it's that sheer volume really that forces you to specialize. And however you want to, that looks like, and it turns into kind of this isolation. So making sure that, the recruiters and sourcers are just succinct. And I'm telling you, it's an engine that if you've ever seen working really well, it is unstoppable. And I look at companies like Spotify, which has built, specialized talent councils for sourcing that work really in tandem with embedded talent partners. At Amazon, when we were there, they utilized a hybrid sourcing recruiter. So they had a bit of a both type scenario. So I think scale demands a really I think structured approach, but I think success demands that those distinct roles really operate with integrated pods, right? They are sharing KPIs, they're sitting in the same intake meetings, that sourcers come into the table with market intelligence, brand strategy, where the recruiter is being like, hey, Mr. Hiring Manager, remember we talked about you need to hire this type of person in the next 3 to 6 days. This candidate is great for this. So it's really about, that those intake meetings so that they all are in there consistently and they don't lose that cohesive candidate experience. And that's what I was referencing earlier.
So the evolution is from jack of all trades, do it all, to specialization as you grow bigger.
I agree.
What about bigger, scale wise? What about established? So like, for example, the younger, less brand known company nobody knows about, regardless of size, versus the more blue chip, well-known company that may still be the same size. Both companies have 2,000 employees. Both companies are hiring 500 people. The one is like I'm sorry, you work where? And the other one's like, oh yeah, I know you guys. So how does sourcing change there?
I think it's still the same, Jelly. I think
Okay.
that sourcer needs to be focused on getting that brand out there. I mean, think about it. When you talk to a really great sourcer, they're passionate, they're curious, they want to know about you. What are your, what's your goals in the next 5 years to get a new job or whatever that may be, and they're talking about that company. It's going to be this repetition with them, and it's this energy that when they get off the phone with that sourcer, they're like, wow, I really want to work at this company. I don't care if I've never heard of the brand, because
Okay.
they're bringing that to the table.
And that comes from knowing the company, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to do your research.
You have to know,
That's
and you
why
have
I'm
to.
saying that sourcers are not just people going out and finding other candidates,
No,
right?
they
They're
need
your
to
brand
also.
strategists.
Yep.
They're your market intelligence. They're
Yep.
bringing data up. Like that's, and you can't always do that when you are running a full cycle desk from beginning to end. Can it be done? Sure, it can. Maybe if you're holding 10, 15 recs, but if you've
Okay.
got you've got a company that's maybe the engineering department is growing faster than the finance department. Like you really need to think about how that is modeled and structured. But I'm a huge proponent of segmenting it, but still working very closely together. That's what my book is a lot about as well.
Okay. All right. You're not hiring, are you? Because just kidding.
Not right now, Charlie.
Damn it. All right. So give me. Let's make people squirm a little bit.
Yeah.
What is a really uncomfortable truth about sourcing that teams and organizations avoid because it's a mirror and it shows up ugly, but it has to be done?
I think this was a tough one. I think
You know what I'm talking about, right? Like it's like if you want to be successful, you got to do this. But in order to do this, you're going to have to do a lot of major change because it's going to have to change. We're going to have to change the way you work in order to do this, or it's not going to work. But you need to do this in order to survive. What is that?
I think well, that one's I could go with so many directions with that. I think the uncomfortable truth is that the traditional kind of relay model, right? And this is kind of me going back to that recruiter versus sourcer, right? And where a sourcer finds a great candidate and then just
Mm-hmm.
blindly
Hand
tosses them over the
hand off.
wall to a
Yep.
recruiter is broken. It is functionally broken. And people watching this are probably like, what are you talking about? Because that model does not always exist within organizations, or people don't understand it, right? And it's moving,
Yeah, it
moving
threatens
past these.
recruiters. Recruiters feel like they don't want to take the candidate
Exactly.
because that means that they haven't done a good job, not realizing that the sourcer's job is for them to have the candidate that they need to, as the
Exactly,
hiring
and
manager.
it's
So yeah,
really yeah, it's getting them into a mindset, and anytime I go into a TA function or a client or whatever and start to move them in this model, the number one problem we have from the day one is that right there, the relationship between the recruiter and the sourcer. And because what it's doing, it's moving past these it really forces the teams to really dismantle their way of their professional identities, right? And sourcers have to develop more of a consultative skills, right? Engaging candidates deeper, having those deeper conversations, while recruiters have to set up and flex really on their own
mhm.
sourcing muscles. And so that is where I think a lot of that, and what happens is it gives up that lone wolf mentality to
I
really share.
that's an uncomfortable truth.
That is a very
Yeah,
uncomfortable truth, and to share that
you gotta
ownership,
switch that.
to share the metrics, to
You
co-create
don't share the
candidate.
metrics.
Yeah,
You don't share the
yeah,
metrics. You
yeah,
share the outcome, but
yep,
it's because you have two different. I'm responsible I'm responsible for bringing you these exceptional rocks of
yeah,
raw diamond, and
yep,
you have to carve the diamond out of it. You can't
absolutely.
do your
Yep,
job because you're not a miner and I'm not a carver. I'm not a
right.
sculptor,
You
right?
said
So
it
it's like,
perfectly.
and that's and I think the uncomfortable truth there, and the problem that I see with a lot of that is that when I bring piles of beautiful uncarved rocks, um, the recruiters look at that and go, "But this doesn't look like a diamond." And
Right,
it's like, no, this is everything you need to make a diamond, a really good diamond, but you still have to do your part. So when I start getting into where like the sourcer has to do the recruiter's job, and now you're mining the rock and you're also starting to polish it
Yeah.
and put, and carve it,
It is not an easy feat, and I
it
will say
breaks.
this,
Yep.
it definitely does break, and that's where the relationship between the recruiter and sourcer, it's almost like a marriage. They need to be speaking and knowing what each other is saying, and I really focus when I build teams like this, I really focus on them getting to know each other. I did a
Yep.
training in Dubai one time, and
That's
it
why
was
the
for
pods
recruiters
are.
and yeah,
Yep.
it was for a team of like 40 recruiters. I was sitting in this room, and they had a segmented model, recruiting and sourcing, and I said, "Raise your hand if you have sourcers." And they raised their hand, and I said, "Well, how many do you have?" And told me how many they had. And I said, "Let me ask you a question. Do you know their first and last name?" Yeah, they told me that. I said, "Tell me what else you know about them." Not a thing.
Mhm.
Nobody could tell me. I was like, "Do they have kids? What's their wife's name? Do you know anything about them?" Getting them to build a relationship together was one of the biggest things that I saw in bringing a model like that together, where it showed successful handoffs.
Where you both have value. Yeah.
Yep,
You both
exactly,
have your own value. Yeah.
exactly. Yep,
Well, we are exceeded the top of the hour here, so I've kept you
we
well
did.
past your. It's way more than I expected. So thank you so much for being with us. Would it be too
Thank you,
much to
Sally.
ask? Is there any way that for our members, for people who are
Mhm.
members of TSI University, which by the way, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about, that is the tsiuniversity.com, where I host Shelly's Alley and all of my my material for the last 30 years. Is there something you can give us, like maybe, I don't know, a discount code for your book or a
Yeah,
couple free chapters of
absolutely.
your book or something?
Yeah,
All right,
yeah, definitely. So you go to koganpage.com, you go to my book called Strategic People Sourcing, punch in your information, put in Kogan Page 25, you'll get a 25% discount and free shipping.
perfect.
Ordering it directly from the publisher. So yeah, it is a great read end to end. I will tell you, this book is not about AI. The last chapter, I did take bits and pieces of AI and rolled it right back into all 11 chapters. So you'll see just one chapter in there about AI, but this is about what we've talked about today
Right, and
is
it's
the
also
sourcing
not written by
strategies.
AI either.
It is also not
It's also
written by
not
AI. My
written by a
God.
human,
What
humans person.
human, a
Well,
human.
folks,
Oh,
I
thank you, Sally.
this has been a great. Lee, we're gonna have to bring you back because there's so many other things I wanted to ask that we didn't have a chance to.
Yeah.
Coming up, we have, for those of you that might want to um, come back, my dear friend Andrew Middleton, who works in a very, very challenging space with AI in the government sector in some really interesting cleared spaces.
Nice.
And he's going to talk about some realities of what you really can do with Microsoft and what you really can do with intelligence and things like that. So he's going to be here next week. Until then, please, folks, be kind to yourselves, and we will see you next.